Hello, you Nevermore Hollows psychos. This is Lafayette Faust. As always, thank you for being a part of this creepy little town. Recently, Chris, Madman Goins, and I have been invited onto other shows, asking us to take part in various discussions. We love doing this because we get to sit in our secret bunker and introduce a whole new bunch of folks to Nevermore Hollows and the strange things that happen here. One of the shows we were invited on was the Do Bash, where we were asked to participate in a discussion about the Halloween movie franchise, and we had such a great time, I thought it would be really cool to share it with you guys. The Do Bash is a fun show, and I hope that you'll support them by becoming fans. I will put the links to their show in this episode description. I hope that you'll give them a listen. And I ask that you help our efforts to grow Nevermore Hollows by taking a moment right now and texting your favorite Nevermore Hollows episode to a friend. And if you haven't already, give us 5 stars and a kind comment. So, with all that behind us, I invite you to sit back, turn on a light, and prepare yourself.
Yeah, they tuned in, it's the Do Bash, rolling deep. Mic check like that, fine, let's hit a beat. Voices flowing like the river, knowledge on the spree. Every episode a journey, come ride with me. Just hit play, it's a vibe, can't you see? The Do Bash, we breaking it down. From the underground to the top of the town. Life's effects, intertwined, wearing the crown. Podcast kings and queens, we wearing the gown.
We're going to redo the Halloween show. The Halloween was our first podcast we ever done. And I like to think we've got a little bit better at it since then. We may not be much better, but I think we've got a little bit better. But we are joined with us tonight. We've got 2 guests tonight, Alan Wattenberger and Chris Goins. They host a podcast called Nevermore Hollows, and I think it's on YouTube, right, guys?
Yeah, it's YouTube and all podcast platforms.
Yeah, so everybody, Nevermore Hollow, remember that. Check it out. It's an awesome podcast. They talk about spooky stories and stuff like that. It's real awesome. So everybody, make sure you check that out while you're listening to the Do Bash. But we're going to get back into this Halloween franchise. If you haven't figured it out before, as far as this group of friends, the Halloween movies are some of our favorite movies we've ever done or ever watched. So we want to just break those down again and talk about them right here, right at Halloween again. And maybe we can do a little bit better job than what we did the last time. You know what I'm saying? So, Alan, I'll just start it off with you since you're a guest on here tonight. When you think about the Halloween movie franchise, what do you think? What's your favorite movie? Favorite kill? What do you think about it?
All right. Well, thanks guys for letting me be on the show. I just came across you guys a couple of weeks ago because Daniel reached out to me, and I'm really enjoying what you guys are doing. So, but to get started with what I think is, I can remember 1978 I was in the back seat of a car. My mom and dad go to the drive-in, and down in Etowah, Tennessee, right? And we go to the drive-in and we're watching Halloween. I didn't even know, I wasn't into spooky stuff at that point. I was 11 years old, and I remember watching that movie thinking, what the heck am I watching here? This guy won't die. My love of horror was officially launched at that movie, sitting in a drive-in watching that original one. So, watching all of them over the years, the good and the bad and the ugly, I always have to go back to that original because that's what started me down the road to horror. That's why I'm a horror writer. That's why I watch horror. That's why I read horror. And so, for me, you can't beat the original. And even my favorite kill, there's a couple of kills, but one of them does, my first favorite comes from the first movie when he takes a dude and he nails him to the wall, right?
Yeah, baby, yeah.
And then he just tilts his head. So shocking for its time, right? And such a character development there when he tilts his head as if he's just looking at, a bug that he's put on, pinned to a board,
that was such character defining moment right there that even at 11 years old, I'm like, something's going on here, right? So I would say probably my second favorite kill that's real close to my first one is it would probably be where he takes the shotgun and sticks it into a hot chick.
That's
You know,
Enmont. She ended
right?
up doing the Renegade. If you remember Renegade to come on USA,
That's right.
she
Yeah,
ended
dude, she was so smoking hot. I rewatched that one last night. Just I was trying to get my notes and everything so I could speak coherently to these movies. And I was like, oh my gosh, this chick's hot. And then she gets the shotgun in the gun. I'm like, wait a minute.
So that was part 4 that you're
Yes.
and that was actually the first Halloween movie that my mom took me to see at the theater. That's the first the Halloween movie that I've seen at the theater was part 4.
Wow. Now, I'll tell you this, as I was rewatching these movies this past week, I got to, it literally, guys, I've watched that when it first came out, probably never watched it again, part 4. So when I was watching part 4, I felt that part 4 was a decent step back into the genre.
Yeah, I thought it was too.
And I'm in a lot of Halloween fan groups on Facebook, and you have to take out the trolls, okay?
Yeah.
But once you take out the trolls there, Halloween 4 is going to be in most people's top 5. The people that really like the Halloween franchise, Halloween 4 is going to be in most of their top 5. And for me, honestly, you've got part 1, 2. A lot of people don't like 3, but I like 3. And then part 4, and then after part 4, things really started to go downhill.
Drastically.
Drastically downhill. And, some people might even say that, part 4 was too campy, for them. But I loved part 4. And part 4 is probably more nostalgic for me.
Yeah.
Because that was the first one that I watched at the theater. My favorite of the whole franchise, though, is Halloween 2.
Yes.
That was the first Halloween movie that I saw out of the franchise. It was on Halloween night, and I watched it on Halloween night. It was on WBN.
Yeah.
I think that was the Chicago station.
Yeah.
But, and it was the TV version. So you got a couple of scenes that wasn't in the normal cut.
Right.
They edited for television. They had to do a few things. But that's probably my favorite and probably my most nostalgic.
Well, it's funny you should say that. When I'm having these types of conversations with other folks, they always bash on 2 because they set up that whole Laurie Strode as the sister thing. Okay.
So,
but while I don't necessarily like that element, damn, what a great movie. I thought 2 was great.
Exactly. I thought it was well paced. I'm huge with pacing.
I am too. Yeah.
I thought it was well scored. I thought it was well paced. I thought the kills were, decent enough. You're not looking at Friday the 13th level gore here, but Halloween wasn't ever supposed to be like Friday the 13th,
I agree.
But, okay, so you mentioned the brother-sister thing and how a lot of people don't like it. And my question is, and I mean, if you don't like it, you don't like it. I can't make people's opinions for them. Right. But it seems to me like I didn't hear very much about people really bashing on the brother-sister thing until David Gordon Green come out in 2018 and made it not exist. He completely retconned all of it.
Yeah, I had heard over the years people grumbling about, I hate that it's the brother and sister thing, but it really blew up and became a thing in 2018. I agree with that.
Okay. So if you've been hearing it over the years, then my point is moot. That's a thing.
Yeah.
I never had a problem with the brother sister thing because I got where he was coming from. I thought it was a little odd in Halloween 2 whenever Laurie was having the dreams and she was going to see Michael at the sanitarium and whatnot. I thought that was kind of odd. The TV version even had having a dream about talking to her foster mother, and her mother said, "I'm not really your mother." There was a little bit of odd placement with the TV version, especially with how they cut some of that stuff up in the editing room. In the TV version, I'm surprised at the number of people that think that Jimmy, which was kind of Laurie's love interest there in the hospital, was the other EMT. But I am surprised at how many people think that Jimmy died, because I've only seen the TV version that never showed Jimmy make it to the car, never showed Jimmy, in the back of the ambulance or anything. They just see him slip in Mrs. Alves' blood and then don't see him no more.
Right. So there's this assumption that he's dead. Yeah, go ahead, Chris. It looks like you got something to say there.
No, I was just agreeing, because my favorite is the original, but two, it picks up right where the first one ends. You see what happens. I don't like the brother sister thing, but in that point, it was just kind of a slight mention, and okay, that doesn't do anything about him ripping people apart. That doesn't matter. But it's Michael Myers is a classic villain, and I love in the newer movies that she just calls him the Shape.
Yeah, I picked up on that this morning when I was rewatching the most recent trilogy. She called him the Shape, and I missed it that first time.
No, because that's what he was billed as, the Shape.
That's what in an interview John Carpenter actually said when he was asked. Michael Myers is the absence of character.
Yes.
And thus you have no character there. He's just a shape. And that in itself is genius. It's super creepy. Loved it.
Well, calling him the Shape actually makes sense, but to go back to the whole brother sister thing as far as part 2 goes, I hadn't never really heard that, and I'm thinking about it. I don't have a problem with it, because I think they had to come up with some reason he wanted to kill everybody. So maybe he just, something like that. He's got to kill his sister. I guess they had to come up with something that's giving him some sort of rage. He had to have a reason to kill everybody, I guess what I'm saying.
Well, I saw an interview. We did an episode that I haven't aired yet too. Chris and me and my brother-in-law Tony and Daniel Michelle. We sat around and we just talked about Halloween in general and what does it mean to the culture, right? And I haven't put it out yet because there's a lot of background noise. We were trying to shoot it in a haunted place, and that day it was a haunted coffee shop, and that day that coffee shop was booming when it's never booming. But
course,
anyway, right, but I watched an interview with John Carpenter and Deborah Hill, and they were saying that they did not like the idea of making them brother and sister either, because that took away from that the not knowing. It's that unknown that is so terrifying. Why is he latched on to Laurie, and why is he why is he after her? But when you explain it, it loses some of that mystery.
Yeah, I could see that.
And there was a touch of that even in part 2. And I understand at the end of the part 2, the big reveal was, the brother-sister thing. But at the very beginning, it picks up with Michael walking through the alley. And he's got Loomis that's down the alley, and he's telling the sheriff, I shot him 6 times. He got up, walked away. And Michael had to go. Now he's got to go find his knife. So he goes into the Elrod's house, steals the knife. And as he's making his way from the Elrod's back door, this is a question that I've asked the guys in group chat, and I'll ask you in a minute. But as he's making his way from the back door, he comes across this other girl, and in the movie, I believe her name is Alice. And Alice is on the phone talking to a friend of hers. And her friend is like, "Oh, you didn't hear? They was somebody that was murdered down the street." And she's like, "Oh, I hear the sirens." And then you see Michael come in behind her, and she gets killed. And she doesn't have anything to do with anybody. And that's kind of one point that I'm making, is he's still killing some random people. And Dick Warlock, which is the guy who played Michael Myers, he was also the stunt coordinator on Halloween 2. He said that he didn't really think that scene made much sense. And I guess as far as what they were trying to do with part 2, it probably didn't. I think that was one of the scenes that Carpenter actually added in to bump up the kill count. But that character, Alice, didn't have any relation with Laurie or anybody else that was going on. You know, Bob got killed because he was with Linda. Linda got killed because she was friend of Laurie's. Annie got killed because she's a friend of Laurie's. So there's all that connection. Alice didn't have a connection in part 2. So I appreciate that. I guess my fandom, you know, in here. My question in the group chat that me and Corky and Matt share was, had Alice not come out of the door and hollered at the Elrods saying, you know, are you okay? You know, I've heard some, you know, Mrs. Elrod screaming. Would Alice have lived? Would she have been out of sight, out of mind for Michael? That was kind of my question.
It's kind of like whoever gets in his line of sight.
Yeah.
Right.
And no, I think she would have lived if she just kept her mouth shut.
I agree. That's where I was going.
Yeah.
Because,
But, you know, too, go ahead, Chris.
No, he didn't kill the old couple.
Right.
You know, he just took the knife from them because they didn't notice him. And it's only if he's noticed or if he's mentioned. And that's the scary part, is that you know, he didn't kill the kid in the original one, even though both, you know, Lonnie and all of them were there. And that was, you know, that's one thing I didn't like about the newer ones, that they broke that rule. They killed a kid because he never really killed a kid in any of the other ones. You know, that's one of the unwritten rules. But, you know, I like, 2's one of those, maybe guilty pleasures. I really like watching 2 just because most people don't like it.
I think it's a real fun movie. I think
I do too. Yeah. And you know, I think there's some clever shots there, like when he's walking through the hospital and they look in the mirror at times to see him walking, which gave it a creep factor.
Yeah.
Now you see that in a lot of shows, but I'd never seen that in a movie or TV show up until that point. But to get to the heart of your question there, you know, maybe line of sight is true. You know, once you recognize him or he locks in on you, but it's that randomness in number 1. We don't know why he's killing people. Right. It's that randomness that anything can happen bad to you in any moment, no matter how good your life is. That's the terror of it all. I mean,
we can go back to that same thing. Would Laurie become his focus if she didn't drop the key off at the old house?
And I believe, I don't think that she would have been the focus had she not dropped the key off.
Right. Yeah, because he didn't even know she existed, right?
Right. You know, and then he saw the other girls because they were with Laurie.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Then, you know, and Laurie's kind of the catalyst of all these killings. So if she just told her dad, I ain't got time, then he might have gone after the dad. It'd be a completely different movie.
And that gets to the spirit of the interviews with John Carpenter and Deborah Hill that I've watched, where they were saying that's what we were literally going for. You know, it was 2 when we were under the gun from you know ourselves and the studio when we threw that in there, because you know it had to make sense. No, it doesn't have to make sense. It was more terrifying when it didn't make sense.
Yeah, that's what terror is. It's not orderly. It's chaos.
Yeah. Fear rarely makes sense. It's just up in your face, and then you have to learn how to deal with it.
Right.
You know.
Right.
You have to have a sheriff's department that don't know what the heck they're doing, because these guys had no freaking clue.
Right.
You know, 57. You know, and Alan and I were talking about this earlier. In my 54-year-old mind, I'm going, you got a 357, kill him. Simple. And they could, you know, and he never really walks fast. It's a constant pace. So it's not like he could outrun them or, you know, anything like that. But it's, you know, you got to have self-endangering children. Yeah. And of course the babysitter is the trope that, that was in movies long before this.
Yeah.
And he's the evil that moves this little town, and that's what Loomis called him, the evil, the evil left. But, again, it's like, who taught Michael how to drive a car in the original movie? And they answered that question later, but what type of employee are you that you go, this guy, he's a complete and total psycho. Let's teach him how to drive.
Yeah.
Right.
That ought to be a fun afternoon,
But when you don't answer, so here's why I think it makes sense not to answer that question at all. Because in the first one, we see him get seemingly, mortally wounded, but he comes back through it. So we're asking the question of, is it supernatural or is it not? So at that point, the driving the car becomes a moot question, because evil's going to figure out a way, and there's going to be that supernatural element to it. But even John Carpenter said, no, there was nothing supernatural about it. He goes, the fact that people were asking me that, and I chose not to answer whether it was supernatural or not, because I didn't, I want you to come away with your own thoughts.
Well, let me ask you guys this. I'm going to take us out of the 70s and early 80s here, and I'm going to bring us up into the 90s. What do you, say what you want to say about part 4 and part 5, which I personally like both those movies. But what do you think they were thinking when they made part 6? Why do you think they chose to go this route with the whole Thorn and this, I guess, supernatural theme they started going with? What do you guys think they planned to do with that? Anybody?
I think that was popular at the time.
Yeah.
Things were getting more spooky and supernatural, and I think they were just trying to reboot the franchise in a different direction and trying to see where they'd go with it.
And it kind of, like Chris, to dovetail off of what you're saying, is by that time, almost 20 years is down the road. We're no longer as rural as we are. And Chris, you and I have had this conversation a number of times. When we're taken out of that rural setting where you just see shit happens, man. You go, there's something in the woods, man. There's something in the woods. Therefore, I accept it. Well, now everything has to be explained. So the way they wanted to explain it was, it's a supernatural thing. So they had to give it some sort of an explanation, because we'd become more rational in those 20 years. And
yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, they had to give an excuse to why this guy can get shot 6 times and not die and stuff like that. There had to be some reason behind it, demonic possession or something like that.
Right. But see, here's why we didn't have to do it. But to go a little off topic, Freddy Krueger, nobody asked why he's in your dreams. Nobody ever really explains why he's in your dreams. They just killed him, and now he's popping up in people's dreams.
Yeah. That dude made a deal somewhere. I promise you that.
Right, but the point is why do we have to answer? Why do we have to explain Michael Myers away? In my mind, he's the iconic, slasher guy.
I agree 100% with that, because even with your hardcore Friday the 13th fans, your hardcore Jason fans, you've got your hardcore Nightmare fans. The lore behind Michael Myers, I mean, there's people that's like, oh, you're not a real fan if you don't know his middle name. You're not a real fan if you don't know his social security number. I mean,
right.
People are they get like that, they get very defensive, but you don't hear them talk about Jason and Freddy like that. So you saying that he is the definitive icon.
He is.
I 100% agree with that.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay. At horror conventions, at sci-fi conventions, and on Halloween, people are drawn to guys dressed like Michael Myers. And my wife, it has God knows how many flipping pictures with Michael Myers. And it's just, and you don't really have to do anything. You just walk down the street and don't pay attention to nobody. You just keep walking, and it's an iconic look, and people are drawn to it.
Well, case in point, Chris, this is a case in point. I was at Chattacon this last weekend, 2 days. Okay. I saw 3 guys dressed up as Michael Myers. saw probably, gosh, 100 shirts, 50 tattoos, Michael Myers, Michael Myers, Michael Myers. I did not see one person dressed as Jason this time around. Now, I did see a few Friday the 13th shirts and a couple of tattoos, but Michael Myers dominated the horror element of that con.
Now, at one convention, I saw two Michael Myers recognize each other and come and do like a mirror thing. That was
I bet that was cool.
hilarious. And buddy, they were in character, man. And then they just kind of shrugged, and kept walking.
That's
but
cool.
It's just become part of the Halloween lore that you got to have somebody dressed up like Michael Myers, and it's like Jason's hockey mask.
Yeah,
it's an iconic thing. I just love the fact that that Michael's mask is Shatner. That just makes and Shatner kind of acknowledges it too, But and that a white faced Shatner scares the crap out of people.
Right. And I'm sure you guys have all seen that little documentary about the shape, how they made the shape, right? Have y'all seen that?
Yeah.
Yeah, dude, that's awesome. Where he said, he goes, we spray painted it, we pulled out some hair, we did this, we did that. And, now to kind of get back to the heart of Corky's question earlier, favorite mask. Okay. The first one is iconic for a reason. It was just the right amount of pale where it showed up perfectly in those dark moments, with low light. From that point on, when they rebooted it, I thought the mask was okay in 4, but man, by 5, I was watching that today. That is almost comical.
I don't know what they were thinking. Yeah.
The neck is all flared out. And, and then when I was watching Halloween H2O, the eye holes were so big, it looked like he was constantly shocked at what was going on.
Was always looking.
We've had some long conversations about those masks, and I asked here. I'll start with this. When I asked this question, or maybe Daniel asked it the last time we went over this stuff, but what do you guys think? Do you think the Halloween movies or in the Halloween franchise would have been so successful if had not been for that mask?
No, I think the mask was it was an important element. The story was well written, it was well acted, it was well directed, everything was perfect. But had that mask been something different, it could have ruined it.
I agree.
Had something on it besides solid white, if it had some kind of expression. No, because that's this guy. He's silent. He never makes a noise, even when he's getting shot. He never makes a noise. And I rewatched the newer ones here recently, and that was one of my favorite parts is when he was getting his stuff. He's gathering his things, and you kind of see him walking in the background at the gas station. And of course, again, me being the guy that riffs on all this stuff, when what kind of a medical facility? What kind of professional are you that this guy walks up and goes, "Hey, I got the mask. When you kill everybody, you care if I show it to him again?"
Yeah.
Right. And he literally says later in there he was trying to provoke a reaction. And I'm like, why would you poke in that universe the most horrific serial killer or mass murderer? You're trying to provoke that evil reaction. You're an idiot.
Yeah, go poking the bear and see what you get, buddy.
Right.
A couple of things on that though. It was I didn't much care for the mask being used as like a totem, like a source of power.
Yeah.
When Michael stole the mask in part 1, he just walked into a hardware store and he just took a mask. Sheriff Brackett, he was telling Annie and Lori whenever they drove by, that we just got a couple of a mask is gone, a couple of knives is gone, and some rope. You know who did it? And they're like, which is still kind of comical because he had the mask when he saw Lori at 7:30 that morning.
Right.
And at 6:30 in the afternoon, the alarm is still going off at this hard.
Right.
Yeah.
That's alarm right there.
Yeah,
And
that's
then,
a continuity problem.
what kind of inventory are these people keeping that they know with one mask, 2 knives, and 1 rope was stolen?
In 78,
Hey.
in 78, before all the technology, we could.
God,
Hey, and what kind of dad and what kind of cop couldn't smell the marijuana coming out of that car?
Right. Yes, right.
I watched that. I'm like, is he like stupid? You know,
Yeah.
how do you not smell weed?
Did you guys run over a skunk or something on the way over here?
the book, the novelization from Halloween, was written by Richard Curtis. And Richard Curtis wrote that book after the movie was made. Okay, so the movie is not based off the book. The book is actually based off the movie. But what is really cool, there's some really cool elements to the book that doesn't show up in the movie. And one of them is talking about Brackett being able to smell pot in the car and being pissed, but also being like, well, you know, what are you going to do? They're kids. You know, they're stupid kids.
But yeah, you know, it's 59, and that was the thing. Oh, they're just kids. Right. You know.
And he even said, when he was talking to Loomis, he said, you got a bunch of kids. They're out, they're parking, they're getting high.
Yeah.
You know, he actually said that.
Yeah.
So it was a known thing. But another cool thing about the book, and I haven't read the book because I can't get a copy. I was listening to the book being read on, I think, YouTube or something.
Okay.
But in the book, another cool thing is whenever he shows up at Tommy's school, at the elementary school, and Lonnie actually runs into him and he has to grab him, and then Lonnie runs off. So Tommy actually turns and he sees Michael standing just a few feet away from him, just staring at him. Right. And Tommy kind of recognizes, okay, something's not right about this, okay? And then in the book, it says that Michael took a step towards Tommy. And I thought that was super creepy because it's like, okay, is he going to do something to Tommy now or what? In the book, you know, he takes a step towards Tommy and then Tommy turns around and runs away. But I thought that was really, really creepy.
Yeah.
In the novel.
Because, you know, especially at that time, you know, that was way before Stranger Danger and all this other stuff.
Yeah.
Right? And, you know, at 79, we were all still pretty much innocent and didn't know nothing. And, you know, you know, you're talking about the police department. That's one thing that I didn't catch when I originally saw the newer movies. And when I'm sitting here this afternoon watching it, the guy's like, whoa, well, Michael Myers has escaped and he's on his way to Haddonfield on Halloween. And the guy goes, well, what do you want us to do? Cancel Halloween? And I was like,
yes. Yeah. Yeah.
You're the police. Yeah.
That was such an inept. Watching those movies over the last couple of days, the new trilogy, man, that police department was completely inept. That sheriff, at one point when the mob goes crazy at the hospital, he just sits down on the steps and is like, screw it, I ain't doing it.
Yeah, that guy's worthless, man. I tell you what. And speaking of that, the last trilogy they made, I can say this much. I thought 2018 was a fairly decent movie. And I really think they blew it with the last 2 movies. But I think, it's my opinion now, I think they really dropped the ball because during that whole movie, I thought this kid was going to end up taking over for Michael Myers.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden he gets killed off and you're like, what in the world just happened? But I think they really dropped the ball with a missed opportunity to have continued these movies with Michael kind of passing the torch on to him, which is what I thought that whole movie was going to happen, and it ended up not happening. But do you guys think that they missed the opportunity right there?
I totally agree with you, man, because here's the thing, okay? You know, we all love stories. You know, Daniel, I don't know the rest of you, you know, too well, but Daniel, I know you're a storyteller too. You're a writer, okay? You know, and you have to evolve the story. You have to evolve the character to some degree, and it has to make sense. And I'm thinking, here we are, we're 40-something years down the road, and I liked that the new trilogy set him up as the old guy. He's old
Yeah.
now. So it set like Corky said, it set us up for a perfect handoff. And
Yeah.
you know, I know I get a lot of heat when I say this. There were scenes in that third movie, like when they make their first kill together. I thought that
Yep.
was a good scene, and
Yeah.
I like the clown mask. You know, it's a
Mhm.
bit cliche, but the way it's that old school clown mask that he just had. I liked it. It added a creepy element. I would have been as much as we've already talked about how much Michael Myers means to us, right? I would have been totally fine with them carrying on that, or at least giving it a
Oh.
shot with the new guy in some, whether he has the Michael Myers mask or he's got a newer version of it. I would have been curious to see what they did.
Oh, I think it would have been awesome. I think it would have been a great thing. According to how the movies were written. But yeah, I think they fumbled on the goal line right there, boys.
I agree.
Here's my take on ends, and you guys feel free to disagree with me. But all right, let's act for a second like 2018 and kills didn't happen. Okay. And you go straight to ends. Okay. Now I'm gonna get on my soapbox here.
Preach, baby, preach.
That's how you feel. Gonna say, come on, preacher.
All right. Now you act like 2018 and kills don't end, and you look at how Laurie is behaving in this movie. Okay. So she's carving the pumpkin, okay, in the kitchen. She's talking to the little girl that she was sitting back in 78, as an adult. She come over. They're talking. She's telling her granddaughter, you need to go out, you need to date, you've had some, crappy things happen to you. And here we go, okay? What happened to the trauma? Okay.
Right.
The trauma.
Now, here's what I'm saying. Let's act like for a second that 2018 and kills didn't happen. Okay. Yeah. So in 1978, Laurie Strode has about a 10-minute run-in with a mass killer, Michael Myers. She has a 10-minute run-in. Now, all that day she had been seeing him. Okay. She'd seen him watching her outside the window at school, and she's seen him step behind the bush, and even her friend come over and was like, hey, there's somebody following me, right before she's asking to borrow the blouse or whatever. But when she's actually being chased and he's trying to kill her, she's only got about a 10-minute encounter with Michael. Okay. Mm-hmm. And you keep in mind that in this version, in ends, okay, Halloween 2 never happened.
Right.
Okay?
Right. Yeah.
The second encounter when in the hospital. So it's only the 10-minute encounter across the street at the house, and then he follows her over to her house. Yeah. So 10 minutes worth of trauma from back then. I believe that she would be acting the way that she was acting in ends. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. After 10 minutes worth of trauma, okay, she would not have turned into the freaking Terminator like she did in 2018. Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
I don't buy that version of trauma. So if you take ends, okay, and now you've introduced this new character, Corey, into the mix, I think ends would work if they never made 2018 and they never made kills. I think ends would work. And I think the only way that ends would work.
Yeah, I see it. I don't disagree. Go ahead.
Now, I thought they were going to make Laurie's granddaughter the new killer.
Yeah, could have.
2018, when they zoomed in on them in the truck, and she's got the butcher knife in her hand, and I went, oh, okay, let's take this in a new direction, and let her be the killer. I would have been fine with that. It would have been different, and I think they kind of did that in the second Rob Zombie Halloween.
A little bit
came out with the mask on, but I told Alan this. I said, I think they're going to keep making these until Lori's in a jazz.
Right.
You know,
Well,
Right.
see, that was my problem with this final trilogy, and you guys may have heard me say this before, but I think they wrote these movies around Jamie Lee Curtis.
oh
You
yeah,
know,
Well,
to
yeah.
make sure she was happy, and like I've said before, everybody goes to these movies to see Michael Myers. We don't go to see Jamie
Yeah.
Lee Curtis. I'm sorry.
Right.
You know.
Well, and if I can say on this here, so when the first Halloween comes out, she is the innocent victim, okay? But yet she survives that, like I like what Daniel's saying, she survives that trauma by, just, being tenacious. I'm going to live, I'm going to live. In the second one, if we include that, we see her become truly, a fighter, a real fighter at that moment. So we see a natural progression of who she is. So even if you take that one out and you get us back into 2018, she's a basket case. She describes herself as a basket case. And I even wrote in my notes, I wrote, after 40 years, she's a basket case. You'd eventually think she would get over such a short amount of trauma, right?
Exactly.
It defined her life. But I just feel that the character was weak. We set her up, even at the end of the first one, she's a stronger woman for it. By the end of 2, even though I know that this timeline doesn't include 2, she is now a strong woman. And then by the time we get here, and the fact that she's a basket case and kind of a badass, it doesn't square, like what I think Daniel's saying. It doesn't square. You're either a basket case or you're a badass.
Well, think about it like this, though, and correct me if I'm wrong, but up until 2018, yes, she may have had some trauma, and she may have been, taking karate and becoming an MMA fighter and all this stuff. But at the end of the day, she knew he was locked up at Smith's Grove. She knew he wasn't coming after her, so
Right.
What are you afraid of?
Right.
If he breaks out of Smith Grove, you're going to hear about it. Now you can get worried. But as long as he's locked up in this mental hospital, what are you so afraid of about this guy that just chased you across the road and, tried to kill you in a closet for like 2 seconds before?
here's the other thing: move away from Haddonfield.
Yeah. Yeah. Change your name,
In H2O, which is, I hate H2O as a movie. Okay.
Yeah.
And I understand it's in a different, we're in a different realm. H2O don't have anything to do with the latest trilogy. But I will say that I bought her version of trauma after 20 years in H2O.
Yeah.
A lot better than I bought her version of trauma after 40 years in 2018.
Exactly.
Because she's telling her boyfriend, she's sitting there on the couch. She thinks that all the kids are at the field trip or whatever. She thinks that it's just her and her boyfriend sitting there on the couch. And she was like, my name is really Laurie Strode. My brother broke out of a mental institution in 1978, and he killed a lot of my friends, and he tried to kill me. She owned it. She understood her character at that point. She understood what they were trying to do, at least, for 78 and Halloween 2. But I bought that trauma. She's like, I went through some crap and it's messed me up. She was an alcoholic in H2O.
Yeah.
She was still seeing some visions and whatnot. But I bought that trauma a lot better than I bought the trauma in 2018. But Alan, as a writer, that when you're writing a character and you're taking this character on their character arc and their journey through the book that you've got them in, and you've got them behaving a certain way, and they make certain decisions, your character kind of it almost writes itself after a while. And you buy this character, you bought into this character. And then if you try to make something at the end of the book, something that's, you're just trying to fit that character into a situation, and that character starts behaving uncharacteristic of that character.
Yeah.
Then you lose it. You're not you're not bought into it anymore. And that's what I feel like happened with the progression in 2018 and Kills and Ends, because she goes 2018, she's the badass, she's the Terminator, she's going to go fight him. In Kills, she's still trying to fight him. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And this is after a 10-minute encounter in 1978 where
Right.
Ends got killed, right?
Right.
So now, fast forward to Kills. Okay, her daughter gets killed, and Michael disappears.
Yeah.
So in 1978, she knows where Michael is. He goes back to the institution, and she's messed up beyond all reality. Okay, and then after Kills, her daughter is killed.
Yeah.
He disappears. Nobody knows where she's at, and she's acting like she's making cake or something.
Yeah, at this point, we can start sweating it a little bit. Hey.
Right. Yeah, it makes no sense. The character development there just falls apart because they're trying to force that character, like you're saying, to fit a narrative instead of letting the character be the character. Well said. And even on that, when she's trying, like one of you guys said it a minute ago, you're even going, yeah, go out, daughter, have all this fun.
Exactly.
While Michael Myers is on the loose at this point.
Yeah.
So for me, her character, what I would have loved to have seen in 2018 in the new trilogy, I would have loved to have seen a Laurie she's been through a traumatic event. She understands what it means. Life is fragile, and that evil can be random, right? So you have to be prepared. I would have loved to have seen her as a strong woman who's absorbed it, dealt with it, and maybe a prepper kind of. That's where they were kind of going. But she was a basket case. I would not have wanted her to be a basket case. I would have liked her to have just been a more confident woman. She's prepared, not a Pollyanna where she's just gonna kick his ass and she's gonna kill him. But we wanted to have some struggles there. But I would have loved to have her been, either a basket case or a badass. I would have preferred the badass. But the fact that she was trying to be two doesn't jive.
Yeah, you can't be a crazy bad basket case. It don't work that way.
Right.
Well, I, for one, would have liked to her at least trained a little better to be a better shot.
Yeah.
In a room that's only 6 feet wide and you miss.
Yeah, come on now, come on.
Yeah.
I'll go ahead, buddy.
No, it's just you got a 30-30 that can drop. That can drop a large animal, and you don't even get close. So or you burn your house down. And who are these firemen? They were hired by the same people that hired the police department.
Right. 11
dude,
of them get murdered like that.
Yeah. I see some guy walking out of a burning building. He's on fire. You know what? I'm not going to hell. I apologize.
Yeah, I certainly ain't gonna square up with him and stand there and let him chop me up. I'll at least attempt to get away from him.
Yeah. When I see him murder the first 2 or 3, I'm like, peace out.
Yeah, I'm good. Yeah, I'll handle this another day. But I'll tell you guys this, and we'll end the show with this. We've been going for about an hour now, but I ask this every time we do a show like this. I ask this, so I'll let you guys take it, and Daniel, you can jump in wherever you want to take it. So here's the scenario. We know all these movies have happened, and we've been talking about this last trilogy here. So they come to you and they say, all right, guys, we know something's happened. We messed up. We want you guys to write the script to fix this thing. How do you write it?
Ooh. That's a good
They laid a big one on you, did they?
Thanks.
Look, that is a dang good question, brother. All right.
Yeah.
So I would say from me, okay, I would try to go back and just unexplain some things. Keep things unexplained. Okay. And then number 2, I would probably not have Laurie in it. I would get a new heroine, that is going to take over. And, how does Michael evolve but still stay true to that character of why is he doing this? How is he surviving this? Don't answer those things, but how do we push that a little further? But we would have to have a different heroine, and she would have to be somebody, and she can't be this little scrawny thing that kicks everybody's ass. That doesn't make sense either. It's got to be a believable. I hate these movies where they take, she's 100 pounds soaking wet, and then she's dropping military trained people. That doesn't make sense.
Right.
But she has to be vulnerable. And to get back to what Daniel was saying about 4, what I found refreshing in 4 is that it was a little girl.
And that was different. Right. That was different.
Yeah. So that's getting back to, and if you get really to the heart of what the first one was, Lori was the innocent girl. Chris and I have talked about this before. She was the virgin, where everybody else is a bunch of hoe bags, right?
Bunch of them hoes, baby.
That's right. So you had evil trying to corrupt that purity. Okay. So maybe get to, if I were to rewrite it, maybe have a younger person that we're rooting for that really is uncorrupted at that moment and has to survive. So that's mine. Chris?
What time period do you set yours in, Alan?
That's a good question.
And the reason why I asked that is because Matt and I have talked about this several times at length, okay? In today's time, technology has made it almost impossible to create the element of isolation.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you can't get isolation like you used to be able to if you set something in the 80s or even some of the 90s.
But it's funny you should say that, because I was just getting ready to say I'd probably make it a period piece. I'd go back to the 70s or 80s, because here's why. Chris and I have a Halloween episode dropping tonight at midnight. And every year I write a big Halloween episode and do it. So this year, Chris plays a role in the show, and it's got our evil little monkey who takes over the sanitarium. And just bear with me, because I'm making a point here. When I was writing, so my little demon-possessed monkey shows up at the sanitarium, sets the crazies loose, and he does all kinds of crazy stuff. I had to overcome these obstacles. Why can't the people call out?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Why can't they take video? Why can't they do this? As a writer, I had to jump through a lot of hurdles, and I finally figured out a way in one sentence to fix it. But I try never to if I write myself into a corner, Daniel, I try to write myself out. But this was one of those moments where I literally sat for hours going, how do I get around this? And it made sense. And Chris, you read the story before you did your parts. It makes sense in this universe. You don't want everyone to lie, like what you were saying earlier, Chris. You can't make that thing happen at the end that doesn't fit in your universe at the time. So it makes sense, but I took hours. I did not want to use this. I wanted it to be something else. But where I'm going with that is, after I wrote that episode, Chris, I went downstairs to my wife when I finally got it written, right? I finally got it written. And I went down there and I said, man, it is hard to write horror in modern times.
Yeah, because everybody's so well connected.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
Yeah.
So yes, in that situation, because when I was a deputy sheriff, I worked corrections. There was times where, we couldn't get out. We had our cell phones and stuff wouldn't work inside the facility because of all the other electronic stuff. Of course, we didn't have them on a person anyway, but it had to, you had to rely on the old school stuff. So yeah, Alan pulled it off, and I think he did a good job.
But it was hard. That's the point. So that's why I would say, if Daniel, that's a great question from a writer to a writer. That is a great question, because you go, hell, I would set it in a time pre-cell phone.
You almost have to, if you want to create total isolation, you almost have to go back pre-cell phone. There's ways that you can do it. Most of the stuff that I'm writing right now, I'm setting back in the late 80s and the early 90s. So I don't really have that problem yet. I can still create isolation. But some of the newer stories, I'm actually trying to work technology into the story.
Yeah.
And I've got some pretty good ideas, a little bit down on paper, but not much. A pretty good story that that's got some technology in it. So yeah, but yeah, to create the isolation, you almost have to go pre-cell phone, pre-internet.
Yeah. For it to make sense, because like now, like, I kept saying, why do these folks cell phone? Why can they not call out? And I thought, well, there's, it's the internet. Well, why is the internet down? And none of it made sense. So I finally, settled on what I settled on. But yeah, when you're right, and I've run into that a couple of times. I've got, there's 100 episodes out on the podcast. 80 or so of them are stories, and of those stories, there's a good 10 or 15% of those stories where I've had to deal with technology, where I'm going, until I deal with this technology, I can't make the horror story.
Right.
Let me ask you something, Alan. Those stories on Nevermore Hollows, are those stories you've written, or are they, stuff you wrote all those stories?
I write them all, and then, and I was doing all the, so here's the cool thing. Now, some of my competition on YouTube, they're starting to follow. I'm not going to say I'm the one that drove this, because, sometimes people just come up with the same ideas at random
Say
times.
it, baby. Nah, say it, baby. Come on.
But I've been trying to get some of these guys to collaborate with me, and they just refuse. Okay. So I just said, screw you. I'm going to do my own thing. Right. So when I'm going in there, I started doing background noises. Like if there's gunshots, you hear gunshots, you hear a creepy door open, you hear the creepy door open, and all that. And I was doing characters and all this. Well, now all the competition is doing that. So then when Chris comes into the world, to my world again, and we decide, hey, we're going to do this together, because Chris is the marketing guy. He's got all this ideas for merchandise. He's been helping me grow the show by reaching out to other podcasters outside. He comes to me sometimes, he goes, we're going to be on this podcast. And I'm like, well, it's not apples to apples, but you know what? Every time we're on a podcast, our show grows. We retain some of that. So, so anyway, where I'm going with this is, yes, I write all the episodes, and now Chris is helping do the voices. And if you want to hear Chris at his, so far his best, listen to Mr. Crispy, that episode called Mr. Crispy. He does like 4 different voices. I have these two brothers who run a funeral home, and he came up with distinct voices for each of them. But when he does our monsters, so our monsters, I'll tell you this. This is the sales pitch to Nevermore Hollows. If I can't write a story about a monster that's never been written, or have a different view of that monster, I will create my own monster. And if I create my own, I want it to be different. I've only got one vampire story because I don't know how to tell a vampire story. It's not been told before. So that's what I want it to be different, right? But
yeah,
we created a monster called Mr. Crispy. Okay. Now, when Chris does Mr. Crispy's voice, I got cold chills when I listened to it. It was so freaking good, guys. So if you want to know about Nevermore Hollows, listen to that one. But one of the things we also do is we're Southern boys, right? We Southern boys, right? We got,
oh yeah, baby.
We got trashy sides, right?
You can hear this twang in my voice, baby. Come on.
Amen, brother. I get comments every now and then from listeners or subscribers, and they'll say, "You're a Southern boy. We love that Southern touch to your voice," which it was just a good comment. But here's the thing. One of the things, we're also tongue in cheek, because I was a stand-up comedian back in the 90s, right? I traveled the country as a stand-up comedian, so I like humor. Well, Chris and I, we like to write humor into our stories. So we've got somewhere, we've got by far the most popular episode I have. Okay. It's the most popular on YouTube. It's the most popular on my podcast. It's called, what's that one about the trade? It's called Drug of the Damned. Okay.
There you go.
It's about these redneck people trying to break bad in a trailer park, and they tried to make some Jello shots. Well, they make Jello shots in a witch's cauldron, and they speak evil into it, and the Jello comes alive, and it starts eating everybody in the trailer park up. Right. So where that came from is I was like, I wanted to tell my version of the Blob story. What's my version of the Blob story? It's Jello, baby. That's, we've seen versions of blobs that were Jello, right? But it's always wink, wink, nudge, nudge. No, in this one, this freaking Jello comes alive and starts eating people. And the way we do it is very clever. It's it fits the universe of this quirky, spooky, paranormal universe that I've created. And Chris does a couple of voices on there, and by far the biggest comments I get off of that episode is Chris's voice work on it, because he's so redneck and so country.
Oh, yeah.
So who does the boot
moonshine to make the Jello shots?
Do what, Daniel?
Go ahead, Daniel.
Go ahead with the Jello shots.
Yeah, it's Alan looked it up, and to make the amount of Jello shots, it requires 666 cups of moonshine.
Yeah, no,
Well,
that's one of those things. I just said if I wanted to make 10,000 Jello shots with moonshine, I Googled it. I went, how many cups of moonshine would it take to make 10,000 Jello shots? And it said 666 cups. I went, this story just wrote itself.
Man.
So my question was, who does the boo hag?
Me.
That's awesome.
I did the boo hag in the first one. He did it in the second one.
Second one.
Oh, okay. All right. So, and I'm guessing you do the Cajun guy, the Cajun kid.
Yeah, Rory. I do Rory.
It's Rory. And I get a kick out of that every time he starts talking, because I could just see a kid sitting on a bicycle. I wonder what's over that hill.
Right.
It's great. I love it.
In
Park.
Copperhead,
I bought
when,
it to Winona's Waffle Hut, Pink Flamingo. It's awesome. I've listened to. I guess I'm probably up to 15 or 16 episodes. I guess that I've listened to now.
We appreciate that. We do.
Yeah.
We appreciate that.
It's awesome. I love the Trailer Park Witches.
my favorite.
Funny.
Yeah.
And then Psycho Juju has popped up a couple times.
Yeah.
So Psycho Juju for me is the funnest, but the hardest voice, because I was trying to capture those monkey, the little, things, and sometimes, I spent hours on that first one. I wrote it. So Daniel, my son, is 23 now, and I wrote it and I did him straight. I just, I was just doing a lower voice of Alan. And he says, Dad, it sounds good. I said, I think I'm missing an opportunity here to create a really deep, rich character. So I sat for hours just working out monkey noises. And I went back and re-recorded all those. And when I detuned the voice, I was like, okay, now I have a full character. It's a really deep, and he's dropping the night. It's Psycho Juju walks into a sanitarium with his clown on the leash, and shit happens, man. I'm telling you.
We're definitely going to have to check that one out, man. And I just want to say, man, we appreciate you guys coming on our little podcast here tonight. And hopefully we can learn something from you guys, man, because you guys got it going on, and we really appreciate you guys. That's Nevermore Hollow. Anybody listening to this, make sure and go check that out, because these guys got an awesome podcast going over there. And we really appreciate you guys coming on tonight, Alan and Chris, and from me and Daniel and the rest of us, we'll catch you next time. See ya.
Yeah, they tuned in, it's the dude bass rolling deep. Mic check like that, fine, let's hit a beat. Voices flowing like the river, knowledge on the spree. Every episode of Journey, come ride with me. Just hit play, it's a vibe, can't you see? The dude bass, we breaking it down. From the underground to the top of the town. Life's effects, intertwined, wearing the crown. Podcast kings.